Welcome to Echoes of Ihsan. Today we're going deep, going to deep dive into a topic that's surprisingly intricate and fascinating. It's all about the rules and rituals surrounding sacrificial animals in Islam,
Oh, yeah.
as detailed in, you ready for this?
Hit me.
Muwatta Imam Malik, Book 23, Sacrificial Animals.
Mm.
This book, compiled by Imam Malik ibn Anas in the 8th century, is like a cornerstone of Islamic jurisprudence.
It really is.
It offers like a treasure trove of insights
Yeah.
into various practices. But for this deep dive, we're going to be focusing on those specific guidelines for sacrifice.
This should be good.
Yeah.
I think it's intriguing how even within acts of worship, Islam emphasizes performing actions properly
Right.
with attention to detail. Choosing an animal for sacrifice might seem, mundane to some people, but it's treated with a sense of reverence.
I would see that.
And a careful consideration.
Yeah.
It's like reflecting this deep devotion and intentionality inherent in Islamic practice.
Yeah, it's about going beyond simply ticking off the boxes
Right.
and delving into the deeper meaning behind each action.
Exactly. So let's start with the first section of Book 23, which outlines the animals that are considered unsuitable for sacrifice. This is where the meticulousness of Islamic guidelines truly comes into play.
Okay, let's unpack this. The text, quoting Al-Bara, mentions that the Prophet Muhammad indicated 4 types of animals that should be avoided. He described them as a lame animal whose lameness is evident, a one-eyed animal which is clearly one-eyed, an animal which is clearly ill, and an emaciated animal with no fat on it. It's almost like there's a checklist to ensure the animal is fit for sacrifice.
What's fascinating here is the emphasis on the obviousness of these flaws. Like, it's not about minor imperfections, but rather clear and significant defects that would impact the health and quality of the animal. This meticulousness might seem unusual, but it reflects a broader theme of striving for excellence, or ihsan, in all aspects of life,
Right.
including acts of worship.
So it's not just about the outward act of sacrifice, but about the inner state of the individual offering the sacrifice.
Right.
They should approach it with sincerity, care, and a commitment to offering the best they can.
Precisely. And choosing a healthy, sound animal is a reflection of that inner state. It demonstrates respect for the ritual and reverence for God.
And this concept of offering the best
Yeah.
isn't unique to Islam, is it?
No, you're right. It resonates across cultures and religions. In many traditions, the quality of the offering is seen as a direct reflection of the giver's devotion and sincerity. In ancient Greece, for example, only unblemished animals were considered suitable for sacrifice to the gods. This act of offering the best of what one has is a symbolic way of acknowledging the divine and expressing gratitude.
It makes me think of the story of Abdullah ibn Umar. He was known for being extremely particular about choosing his sacrificial animal. The story goes that he specifically instructed Nafi, his servant, to buy him an excellent horned ram, even though he was ill and couldn't personally attend the Eid prayer. He wanted to ensure that even in his absence, the animal sacrificed on his behalf was of the highest quality.
Yeah, that story is a powerful illustration of the importance placed on the quality of the animal. Even above personal convenience, it reinforces this idea that the sacrifice is not just a symbolic act, but a deeply personal expression of faith and devotion, and that the intention behind the act is paramount.
Now let's move on to the timing of the sacrifice. It seems there are specific rules regarding when the sacrifice should be performed. This is where things get quite interesting.
Indeed. This section in the Muwatta emphasizes the importance of communal prayer, and following the Imam's lead, it highlights the social dimension of Islam, where rituals are not merely individual acts, but are performed collectively,
I see.
fostering unity and a sense of shared purpose within the community.
So it's not just about performing the act itself, but about doing it in unison at the designated time and under the guidance of the Imam. It's fascinating how even the timing of the sacrifice is interwoven with these principles of communal unity and obedience to religious leadership.
And this is beautifully illustrated in the anecdotes of Abu Burda and Uwaymir, 2 companions of the Prophet.
Oh, wow.
Both made the mistake of sacrificing their animals before the Imam on the day of sacrifice.
Whoops. I imagine that didn't go over well.
It certainly didn't.
Oh, no.
The Prophet Muhammad, upon learning of this, instructed them to sacrifice another animal each. Their actions were deemed unacceptable, highlighting the importance of adhering to the established protocols and respecting the communal aspect of the ritual.
It's a reminder that Islamic practices, even those with deep personal significance, are often intertwined with communal obligations. and a framework of shared observance.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that individual actions have implications within the larger community. And adhering to established rituals ensures a sense of harmony and collective worship.
This social dimension is particularly evident when we delve into the next section, which addresses what to do with the meat after the sacrifice. And this is where we encounter some rather unexpected guidelines.
You're right, it might come as a surprise that the Prophet Muhammad initially prohibited consuming the sacrificial meat after 3 days.
That does seem a bit unusual, especially in those times when food preservation methods were limited. Wouldn't it make sense to preserve and utilize such a valuable source of sustenance? There must have been a compelling reason for this initial restriction.
There was. Remember, this was a time when Medina was witnessing a significant influx of poor and needy individuals. The initial prohibition on storing the meat could have been a strategic measure to ensure that it was distributed quickly and widely among those who needed it most. It reflects a deep-rooted concern for social welfare and a commitment to prioritize the needs of the vulnerable within the community.
That makes a lot of sense. It's a remarkable example of a seemingly simple ritual being used to address a pressing social issue and ensure the well-being of the entire community.
It really highlights how Islam integrates acts of worship with acts of social responsibility.
So we've talked about choosing the animal, the timing, and the initial prohibition on storing the meat. But what happened next?
Well, as the situation in Medina evolved, so did the rulings regarding the sacrificial meat. The Prophet Muhammad eventually allowed the meat to be stored and consumed after 3 days.
That's interesting. What prompted that change?
Well, the text suggests that the change was in response to concerns raised by people about wasting valuable resources. They were accustomed to utilizing the animal's fat and skin and questioning the logic of discarding the meat, especially when it could be preserved and used to benefit the community.
It sounds like a very practical and compassionate response to the needs of the people.
Exactly. The Prophet Muhammad, known for his wisdom and empathy, took their concerns into consideration and adjusted the ruling. This demonstrates the dynamic nature of Islamic jurisprudence, where rulings can adapt to changing circumstances while still upholding the core principles of the faith.
It also highlights the importance of dialogue and community feedback in shaping religious understanding. It's not a top-down approach, but a dynamic process that involves the community.
You've hit the nail on the head. Now, having established the guidelines for individual sacrifice, let's delve into the concept of shared sacrifices, where multiple individuals share the rewards of sacrificing a single animal.
This is intriguing. It suggests a sense of collective participation in the act of sacrifice. The text mentions Jabir ibn Abdullah's account of sharing a camel and a cow among 7 people during the year of Hudaybiyah.
Yeah. This practice of sharing was particularly common during the early days of Islam, especially during times of hardship or when resources were scarce. It allowed individuals to partake in the blessings of the sacrifice, even if they couldn't afford to sacrifice an animal on their own. It was a practical solution rooted in the spirit of community and mutual support.
That's a beautiful example of how Islamic practices adapt to circumstances while upholding the core values of compassion and sharing.
Absolutely. However, as we'll see in the next part of our deep dive, there were differing opinions on the preferred practice, which is where things get even more interesting. But for now, we've covered a lot of ground. From choosing the right animal to understanding the social implications of meat distribution, the Muwatta Imam Malik offers a fascinating glimpse into the complexities of this ancient ritual.
This deep dive has already revealed so much about the depth and nuance embedded in these practices. We've seen how a seemingly simple act of sacrifice is laden with meaning, symbolism, and a profound commitment to excellence, compassion, and community.
Indeed. And in the next part, we'll continue our exploration, uncovering further insights from the Muwatta Imam Malik, delving into the intricacies of shared sacrifices, and understanding how these age-old practices continue to inform and shape Islamic values in the modern world. Welcome back to Echoes of Ihsan. Before we paused, we were just immersed in the intricacies of sacrificial animals in Islam. Guided by the wisdom of Muwatta Imam Malik, Book 23, we've already uncovered so much, like a wealth of insights into the meticulousness and intentionality behind choosing an animal, the significance of communal prayer, and following the imam's lead, and that evolving understanding of storing and distributing the meat.
Yeah, it's amazing how much depth we've already discovered in these practices.
Mm.
It kind of challenges the idea that rituals are just empty gestures, doesn't it?
It really does.
There's so much thought,
There's-
symbolism,
Right.
and social consciousness interwoven into these traditions.
Absolutely. And one of the most powerful threads running through all these details is the emphasis on Ihsan,
Right.
striving for excellence in all aspects of life, including our acts of worship.
So we've seen Ihsan reflected in every stage of the sacrifice, from selecting the animal to distributing the meat. It elevates the act from a mere obligation to a profound expression of faith and devotion.
Exactly. And this brings us back to the topic of shared sacrifices. While permissible, it wasn't always seen as the ideal approach. The text highlights concerns about potential boasting and ostentation when multiple people pooled their resources for a larger animal.
So it's like saying that the true value lies in the sincerity of your intention, not in the size or cost of your sacrifice.
Precisely. The emphasis is on humility, not extravagance. It's a reminder that true piety is reflected in the purity of our hearts and the sincerity of our intentions, not in outward displays of wealth or status.
And this focus on intentionality and sincerity, it's particularly relevant when we consider the question of sacrificing for a child in the womb.
Oh, it's a fascinating topic. This generated diverse opinions among Islamic scholars, highlighting the dynamic and evolving nature of Islamic jurisprudence.
So the text mentions that Abdullah ibn Umar, a highly respected companion of the Prophet, chose not to sacrifice for an unborn child. This seems counterintuitive. If sacrifice is such a valued act, wouldn't it make sense to extend that to an unborn child as well?
Well, it's important to remember that while sacrifice is a highly recommended act in Islam, a sunnah,
Right.
it's not obligatory. Think of it like this. A sunnah is a practice of the Prophet that is encouraged, but not mandatory. A well-known example is the sunnah of fasting on Mondays and Thursdays. It's something Muslims are encouraged to do, but it's not considered a sin if they don't.
So Abdullah ibn Umar's decision not to sacrifice for an unborn child reflects his understanding of sacrifice as a recommended act, not a mandatory one.
Precisely. And his opinion wasn't universally held. This highlights the ongoing process of debate and interpretation that has always characterized Islamic scholarship. The Muwatta Imam Malik offers a snapshot of these discussions, showcasing the intellectual rigor and diverse perspectives that contribute to shaping religious understanding.
So it's a reminder that engaging with religious principles is not about blind adherence, but about thoughtful exploration, reasoned debate, and nuanced application of principles to real-life situations.
Yes, exactly. And this brings us to another kind of intriguing aspect of the text, the initial prohibition on consuming the sacrificial meat after 3 days, and the subsequent allowance to store it. This seemingly contradictory shift in ruling might seem puzzling at first glance.
Yeah, it does feel counterintuitive, especially in a time when food preservation methods were so limited. It would make sense to maximize the use of such a valuable resource.
However, if we consider the historical context, the ruling becomes much clearer. Remember, this was a time when Medina was experiencing a large influx of poor and needy individuals, many of whom were refugees fleeing persecution. The initial prohibition on storing the meat could have been a way to ensure that it was distributed quickly and widely among those most in need.
So it's a powerful demonstration of prioritizing the needs of the community over individual desires, a testament to the Islamic values of charity and social responsibility.
Oh.
It reminds me of the concept of zakat, one of the 5 pillars of Islam, where Muslims are obligated to give a portion of their wealth to charity.
Oh, you've made a great connection. Both zakat and the initial ruling on sacrificial meat highlight the emphasis on social welfare and community care that is deeply embedded in Islamic teachings. The idea is that even in moments of personal celebration and religious observance, the needs of the less fortunate should not be forgotten.
And that subsequent change in ruling, allowing the meat to be stored, demonstrates the flexibility and adaptability of Islamic jurisprudence. It shows that religious rulings are not static and can evolve to address the changing needs of the community.
Exactly. The text suggests the change was prompted by people's concerns about wasting valuable resources. They were accustomed to utilizing every part of the animal and questioning the logic of discarding the meat, especially when it could be preserved and used for the benefit of the community.
And it seems like their concerns were taken seriously. The Prophet Muhammad, known for his pragmatism and responsiveness to the needs of the people, adjusted the ruling.
This highlights a crucial aspect of Islamic jurisprudence. It's not just a set of rigid rules, but a dynamic system that seeks to balance religious principles with practical considerations,
Right.
and the well-being of the community.
So we've gone from carefully selecting the animal to understanding the importance of communal participation to navigating the complexities of meat distribution. Each step is interwoven with a deep concern for social welfare, a commitment to excellence, and a recognition that religious practices are not performed in a vacuum,
Uh-huh.
but within a dynamic social context.
And all of these facets are brought to life through the stories and anecdotes woven throughout the Muwatta Imam Malik.
Speaking of stories, let's revisit the guidelines for selecting the sacrificial animal. The text outlines 4 types of animals to avoid: the lame, the one-eyed, the clearly ill, and the emaciated. It's fascinating how much emphasis is placed on choosing a healthy and sound animal.
Right. This meticulousness might seem like a minor detail, but it reflects a deeper spiritual principle: the importance of offering the best of what we have. As an act of devotion and gratitude, it goes back to the concept of Ihsan, striving for excellence in all that we do, including our acts of worship.
It's a reminder that even seemingly mundane actions can be imbued with spiritual significance when approached with the right intention and attention to detail.
And this brings us to the story of Abdullah ibn Umar, who was so particular about choosing his sacrificial animal. Remember, he specifically instructed his servant to purchase an excellent horned ram, even though he was ill and couldn't attend the Eid prayer.
Right, so his insistence on selecting a prime animal, even in his absence, underscores the sincerity and intention behind his sacrifice. It's a beautiful illustration of how even the smallest details can reflect a deep commitment to faith and a desire to perform acts of worship to the best of one's ability.
His story serves as a powerful reminder for us all. It encourages us to approach our acts of worship, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, with the same level of care, intentionality, and a sincere desire to offer the best we can.
It's about recognizing that every action, every choice we make, can be an opportunity to express our faith
Uh-huh.
and connect with the divine.
Exactly. And this connection between the ritual and the deeper meaning, between the outer act and the inner intention, is what truly elevates these practices beyond mere tradition. It's what infuses them with a profound spiritual significance that continues to resonate with Muslims across centuries and cultures.
This deep dive has been a fascinating exploration of the intricate world of sacrifice in Islam. We've delved into the historical context, the social implications, and the spiritual underpinnings of these ancient practices.
Indeed. And as we move into the final part of our discussion, we'll explore how these traditions continue to inform and inspire Muslims in the modern world, providing a framework for understanding the deeper meaning of sacrifice and its relevance in our lives today.
Welcome back to Echoes of Ihsan. We've spent this whole episode exploring those intricacies of sacrificial animals in Islam, guided by the wisdom of Muwatta Imam Malik. Our deep dive into Book 23 has revealed how these practices are so much more than just, a set of rules. They reflect like a rich tapestry of Islamic values: piety, generosity, community, and the pursuit of excellence in every aspect of life.
Yeah, and it's been fascinating to uncover those layers of meaning embedded in these rituals. Like each detail, each rule, each anecdote offers a glimpse into the heart of Islamic teachings. We're connecting to this heritage that spans centuries, yet still resonates so deeply with Muslims today. It really is amazing. One of the most compelling takeaways for me has been that emphasis on intentionality. It's not about simply going through the motions,
Right.
but understanding the why behind the what.
Exactly. We've seen this throughout our discussion, whether it's carefully selecting a prime animal, following the imam's lead during prayer, or ensuring the meat reaches those in need. Every action is just imbued with a deeper sense of purpose
Yeah.
and meaning. It's about aligning those outward actions with our inner intentions and striving for excellence,
Yeah.
or Ihsan, in every aspect of our worship.
Precisely. And this commitment to Ihsan is beautifully illustrated in the meticulous guidelines for selecting that sacrificial animal. The text outlines 4 types of animals to avoid: the lame, the one-eyed, the clearly ill, and the emaciated. Those guidelines might seem overly specific at first glance, but they speak to a deeper principle.
It's about demonstrating reverence and respect through the quality of our offering. Like, it's a tangible way of expressing our commitment to Ihsan, to offering the best of what we have, not just in terms of material wealth, but also in the effort and intention we put into fulfilling this act of worship.
Precisely. And this attention to detail isn't limited to just choosing the animal. It extends to every aspect of the sacrifice: the timing, the method, the distribution of the meat, even the manner in which the animal is treated before the sacrifice. It's like this holistic approach, recognizing that each element contributes to the overall significance of the ritual.
And this brings us to another crucial aspect we've touched on throughout our deep dive, the social dimension of the sacrifice. It's not just an individual act of piety, it's also about strengthening communal bonds and caring for those in need.
Yeah, we saw a powerful example of this in the initial prohibition on storing the meat. While it might seem counterintuitive at first, especially in a time when food preservation methods were limited, it served a vital social purpose.
Right. It ensured that the meat was distributed quickly and widely, reaching those who needed it most. This reflects a deep-rooted concern for social welfare that's integral to Islamic teachings. It's about recognizing that even in moments of personal or religious celebration, the needs of the community should not be overshadowed.
And that subsequent change in ruling, allowing the meat to be stored after 3 days, demonstrates the flexibility and adaptability of Islamic jurisprudence. As the context changed and concerns about potential waste were raised, the ruling evolved to address those evolving needs of the community.
So it's a beautiful example of how Islamic law seeks to strike a balance between upholding core principles and adapting to practical considerations.
This adaptability is a testament to the wisdom and foresight embedded within Islamic tradition. It allows these ancient practices to remain relevant and meaningful across changing contexts and circumstances. Thinking about how these principles translate to the modern world, it strikes me that the concept of shared sacrifice takes on a new dimension. While the practice of sharing an animal might be less common today, the spirit of collective responsibility and contributing to the well-being of the community remains as relevant as ever.
Absolutely. Whether it's through charitable giving, volunteering our time, or simply extending a helping hand to those in need, we can embody the essence of shared sacrifice in countless ways. Those principles we've explored today offer a timeless framework for approaching not only acts of religious observance, but also how we engage with the world around us.
So this deep dive into Muwatta Imam Malik has been truly enlightening. We've journeyed through centuries of Islamic scholarship, uncovering the depth of meaning and wisdom embedded in the seemingly simple act of sacrificing an animal.
Yeah, we've seen how these practices embody a profound commitment to excellence, compassion, and community. They serve as a powerful reminder that even the most ancient traditions can offer timeless guidance for navigating the complexities of our modern world. So thank you for joining us on this episode of Echoes of Ihsan. We hope you've gained a deeper appreciation for the richness and depth of these traditions and the wisdom they continue to offer.
And until next time, may your pursuit of Ihsan illuminate your path.